Mitch here. Thanks for joining me today for the Security News Update. Let's see what we got going on here today. Deepfakes. It's a subject that's been popular in the news. They're really good. They're getting better. Some people are saying that deepfakes are being created every couple of minutes. Last year, the European Parliament estimates about 8 million of them will circulate in the EU alone this year. So, we're talking about, these are fake videos that are designed to somehow commit fraud. And I know some people say, well, if I have a politician and I put words in his mouth, that's not fraud. Well, yeah, technically it is, because the politician didn't say that. But a lot of them are being used for stealing money from businesses, getting people to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. So it's a big problem. Russia spreads them, but maybe so does your competition. And whether it's corporate branding or whether it's your reputation, dirt travels really fast, and people believe dirt, and they don't believe if you come back and say, no, that wasn't me. And one example is that 44% of cybersecurity leaders said that their organization has been hit by deepfake audio attacks, with 6% saying that it cost them money or caused business interruption or loss of intellectual property. So it's real. If you need assistance with that, please reach out to us. Senator Angus King said that government-wide cyber cuts have weakened U.S. cybersecurity. He said, attacks against infrastructure and businesses are skyrocketing. I can say what we're seeing, that's certainly true. He said that, and this is a quote, "The cyber domain is the hellscape right now." Not great. And he also said that, another quote, "The shit's getting kicked out of us." So, I think, and, he is on the Senate Foreign Intelligence and Armed Services Committees. So he probably knows a lot more than he can talk about publicly. But it's a problem. And if you're not paying attention to it, taking it seriously, then it could easily be a problem for you. One of the items in the CMMC FAQ, people ask the question, I have a conference room and it's got it's a fishbowl. It's got a glass wall. Can I handle CUI in it? And the answer is it depends. If you do, then anybody who has the potential capability to walk past that conference room is considered in scope for your CMMC assessment. If that's okay, if that's what you want to do, then that's not a problem. And obviously they need to have a need to know as well, but understand that you may well be increasing the scope. Maybe you put some blinds up so you can close the blinds when you're doing that. But definitely something to think about. And if you have an assessment, assessor's going to ask you questions about that. In the reference section, I said last week, and again this week, the U.S. did not sign the UN cybercrime treaty that Russia wrote. My opinion is that's a good thing. It's not a surprise, hopefully. What it does is it really cedes a lot of power to a adversary in terms of what they can do, in terms of what they can subpoena, in terms of what you have to do, cooperation. I'm hoping that they never sign it, but never say never. But even if they do sign it, the Senate has to ratify it, and then you have to pass some law. But it's the reason why Russia and China are so big on it is all about surveillance. And so there's an article in the reference section of this week's newsletter that talks about that in detail. Probably worthwhile getting yourself educated about. In the software and hardware section, Microsoft, and I'm not sure what drove this, but probably competition, is allowing both enterprises and education customers to uninstall crapware. My term, some people have much less PG rated words for the bloated crap that they install on your computer. And whether it's, from Microsoft or whether it's from a third party where Microsoft's getting paid, it's not something that you signed up for, not something you asked for, not something you want. And it used to be that you couldn't install it. Now, if you are among a certain group of customers, you can uninstall it. And a lot of people have resorted to building their own Windows images and using those images instead of the ones that Microsoft provides, which is, time consuming and have to be maintained. But that is another way to go do that. And the important issue, this is really an important issue. Um, you know, OpenAI says voice authentication is as secure as leaving your front door unlocked. I think that's basically right. I've never been a fan of voice authentication because I've always felt that it could be compromised. Now, OpenAI, Sam Altman said that they have fully defeated voice recognition systems used by banks, and he's predicting a significant impending fraud crisis. So, if you're using voice as a way to authenticate yourself to your bank, my recommendation is to stop that right now. Switch to something which is way more secure. If you need assistance in understanding that, let us know. We'll be happy to help you. For consumers, there's a glimmer of hope there, which is that if you do use voice authentication and your account gets hacked, for the most part, you're not out the money. But if you're a business and your account gets hacked, completely different set of rules. They assume you're a sophisticated user, you know what you're doing, you set up the appropriate security protocols, and if you don't do it, that's on you. Sorry. And we always say that the weak link in all cybersecurity programs is a soft, squishy one, being the human beings. Here's an example of that. SonicWall just had a breach that they reported. All their customer configuration files were compromised. What happened was an engineer stored his one-time password, his MFA recovery keys, on his computer's desktop, unencrypted there for anybody who could get to his desktop. And someone phished him, which compromised his computer. And so the bad guys had access to his one-time passwords, which allowed them to bypass multi-factor authentication. This is a user training thing. So if your users are not trained on that, if you do have one-time recovery keys, make sure they are stored somehow securely, not just sitting on your desktop or in a file on your computer where it says, here's the bypass key for for logging on to the XYZ system. Don't do that. And they did a lot of serious damage as a result of that. In the legislative and legal department, the president pardoned a former Binance CEO who was convicted of massive cryptocurrency fraud. Whether that has anything to do with the fact that the president, personally is making billions of dollars off crypto, whether or not the Binance company is invested in the president's personal cryptocurrency, whether or not, there's some people would say a pay for pardon scheme going on. Don't know, but it's certainly interesting, and there's going to be a lot of questions, I think, asked about that. U.S. sanctioned Huawei, the Chinese electronics firm, blocking them from buying U.S. stuff. The U.S. thought that this was a way to stop them from competing with us. Well, it turns out what they did, it did have a short-term impact. But what they did was they developed their own operating system, so they no longer use Android. They developed their own chips. They created a supply chain which is independent of the United States, and their global market share is actually up. And U.S. businesses which were supplying these guys lost $33 billion in revenue a year. China has mimicked the U.S. port fee. The U.S. implemented a $50 per ton fee on Chinese-owned ships that are coming to that. So if the stuff is coming from China to the United States and it's on a ship that's owned by China, and it weighs 2,000 tons, then they're going to charge you whatever that is, $20,000. Do the math there, but you get the idea. If it's coming in on a U.S. owned ship, then that fee doesn't exist. The theory is it's going to encourage people to build ships. Well, building ships takes years and years, costs hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. So that's not going to have any short-term impact. except it will raise prices for consumers. And so China implemented a reciprocal fee just like that on U.S. chips coming into China. So it's a war. It's going on. We'll see where it winds up, but there's no simple answers. In the breaches department, Russia hacked two Texas electric co-ops. And I'll talk about Texas's response to that. The victims are the San Bernard Electric Co-op, which has about 28,000 customers, and the Kames Electric Co-op, which has about 23,000 customers, and they leaked the stolen data. So not great, but I'll tell you what Texas is doing about that. And lastly, in the breaches, I guess this is sort of a breach, the defense contractor who stole 0 days that his company was developing and sold them to the Russians for cryptocurrency, pleaded guilty to theft of trade secrets. While the DOJ is good at not naming the guilty is pretty likely Harris. They didn't say it was a sting. So I don't know whether the Russians got those 0 days or not, but I'm thinking they did because usually they're pretty good about saying, oh, it's really an FBI agent that they sold it to. They didn't say, but he pleaded guilty. So that one went away pretty quickly. Not sure why it did, but it did quickly. Next in the daily blogs, as I said, Texas is getting the crap beat out of it with hackers, all kinds of cities and agencies. Now that the feds have basically stopped assisting the states and local governments, and they've fired a huge chunk of the folks at CISA, states are on their own. And so Texas decided to go do something about that. Good for them. I'm not often a fan of things that Texas does, but in this case, I'm absolutely a fan of this. It's called the Texas Cyber Command, sort of name clone of the U.S. Cyber Command. They funded it to the tune of $130 million over the next 2 years. Is going to be housed at the University of Texas in San Antonio. They have a pretty active cybersecurity program, but I think it's because of the huge military presence there, they probably can find a lot of people. They want to hire 60 people in the next year and then another 60 people in the year after that. So they're looking for cyber people. With the Fed stepping out of supporting the states, I'm thinking this is the future. The states probably don't like that, and they're going to have to cough up the money, and they really don't like coughing up the money for things that, they can't tout on TV at night. But it's either that or, have their agencies hacked on a recurring basis, have their cities hacked and shut down on a recurring basis. So you gotta, is it worth $50 million a year? Don't know. But I think, everybody's watching what Texas is doing to decide whether or not that's a good plan. As I said a little while ago, the U.S. has declined to sign the UN Cybercrime Treaty. I think this is a good thing. So we'll see. It was a way for Russia and China to force democratic governments to help them arrest and imprison people they don't like, people who are in our country and not their country. Out of the whatever it is, 180 member countries in the United Nations, about 70 signed the treaty, so a little bit less than half. The U.S. Was not one of the signers. The U.K., which is kind of its own surveillance state, was one of the signers, as was the EU. So much for privacy in the EU. There's a concept. But we'll see where it goes. Next, and this applies to all smart appliances. A software engineer got annoyed because his smart vacuum, which was a iRobot vacuum, stopped working, sent it back. They supposedly said it was not broken. So after a year of just going back and forth and going out of warranty, he decided to reverse engineer it. And what he discovered is that this thing was talking back to its maker, and he had blocked some of the data flow, but not all of it. And so The vacuum said, well, the hell with you. If you're not going to let us go off and steal your data, which includes pictures of your houses, cameras, and these vacuums and stuff, um, then we're just going to shut your vacuum off. They obviously had the ability to go do that. There's a whole web server in there, remote access controller in there. Um, so it's an interesting article. And lastly, second to last, I guess, in the news bites department, Mondelez, which owns a lot of food brands like Oreos and a bunch of others, and this is really interesting. They're using AI to reduce marketing content generation costs by 30 to 50%. This is something we do. We can help you with too. So that's attractive to you. Content creation can be very expensive. Using AI to do that can reduce it dramatically, and do some cool stuff. The politically correct, Elon is always politically correct. Mr. Elon says, if she's a 10, you're an asset. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but people have used, they call it sex war, I think is the term they use for it. And basically it's, what this article said was, and this is not Elon saying this is the article, is that, these countries that are trying to get at top Silicon Valley technical folks, they're marrying these people, they're having kids with these people, which kind of blows my mind. But that's what they're saying is going on. So, it's certainly something to consider. People have used sex as a tool for espionage for a long, long time. So that part's not new, but this is pretty interesting. The U.S. Government's Cyber Talent Corps, which was about the only damn way the government was getting any new cyber talent in the government, is just crashed and burned. They actually, the president revoked the offers that these guys had coming out of high-end colleges. And so, what the Government Accountability Office said, well, we gave you the scholarship on the condition that you were going to come work for the government. We changed our mind. We don't want you to work for the government anymore. So either you have to pay us back, $100,000, $200,000, whatever it was, or you find another job in some government agency somewheres that we approve of in the next 18 months. So it's really, these guys are really getting screwed. And for a lot of people, they're going to be saddled with a lot of debt that they did not anticipate they're going to be saddled with. iRobot, speaking of smart vacuums, they're facing bankruptcy. Apparently the vacuum will still turn on if the company does shut down, which we don't know. But it won't do any of the cool stuff that you spent $300 for. It'll basically turn into a cheap, a non-smart vacuum. And lastly, in the news bites, Google says that they're blocking 10 billion scam messages a month in Android, assuming Apple is doing the same thing. How many messages are being generated? That's a large number. And lastly, if the incredible speed of AI innovation is making you very nervous, you're not alone, and it should make you nervous. We're building a university program, which is very affordable. And if that's something that's of interest to you, please reach out to us. We'll let you know how that's going to work. Until next time, thanks for listening. Stay safe, and that's all I have for today.